Before money, before gold, before banks, entire armies were paid in salt. Wars were fought over it, cities were built around it, and empires collapsed without it. This is the hidden history of the one substance that built civilization and is sitting on your dinner table right now. It's on every table, in every kitchen, in every culture on Earth. You've used it today without thinking about it, but for most of human history, salt wasn't just a seasoning. It was money, it was power, it was survival. This is the story of how a simple mineral controlled the ancient world, started wars, toppled empires, and quietly shaped the civilization you live in today. Here's what most people don't realize. The human body cannot produce salt. You need it to survive. Without sodium, your muscles stop working, your nerves stop firing, your heart stops beating. This isn't a preference, it's biology. And for thousands of years, before refrigeration, before preservatives, before chemistry, salt was the only way to keep food from rotting. Meat without salt lasted days. Meat with salt lasted months. In a world without supermarkets, that difference meant life or death. Salt didn't just flavor food. Salt was the reason armies could march, the reason cities could grow, the reason winter didn't mean starvation. The earliest known salt mine in the world is in Romania. It's called Salina Turda, and it was in operation over 5,000 years ago, before the pyramids, before Rome, before written history as most people know it. Ancient Chinese records from around 2700 BC describe salt being harvested from lake beds, and they already understood something remarkable, that people would always need it and never stop needing it, which meant whoever controlled salt controlled everything else. The city of Salzburg in Austria literally means salt city. It was built around salt mines and became one of the wealthiest cities in medieval Europe, not because of art or trade, but because of what was buried beneath its streets. And then there was Timbuktu. Today we think of it as remote and forgotten, but in the 14th century, Timbuktu was one of the richest cities on Earth. Why? Because it sat at the crossroads of the trans-Saharan salt trade. Slabs of salt from the Sahara were worth their weight in gold, sometimes literally traded gram for gram against gold dust. But here's the detail that stops people mid-conversation. The word salary, the money you earn every month, comes directly from the Latin word salarium, which comes from sal, salt. Roman soldiers were sometimes paid in salt or given a salt allowance to buy it. It was that valuable, that essential. A soldier who performed well was worth his salt, a phrase we still use today without knowing where it came from. The Roman Empire didn't just use salt for food, they used it as currency, as medicine, as a preservative for their military supply chains. The road that carried salt into Rome was called the Via Salaria, the Salt Road. It's one of the oldest roads in Italy, built not for conquest, built for salt. Salt didn't just build empires, it destroyed them. During the American Civil War, the Union deliberately targeted Confederate salt works because without salt, the South couldn't preserve food for its armies. Soldiers starved. Supply chains collapsed. Salt became a military weapon. Napoleon's retreat from Moscow in 1812 is one of history's greatest military disasters. 500,000 soldiers marched in. Fewer than 100,000 made it back. Historians point to many reasons: the cold, the distance, Russian resistance. But one factor, rarely mentioned: the French army ran out of salt. Wounds couldn't be preserved. Food rotted. Men who might have survived their injuries didn't, because there was nothing to keep infection from spreading. In Venice, the salt trade funded the entire republic for centuries. The Venetians didn't just sell salt, they weaponized it. They signed treaties that gave them monopoly control over salt distribution across the Mediterranean. Cities that refused Venetian terms found their salt supplies cut off. Surrender or starve. But perhaps the most explosive chapter in salt's history isn't about war, it's about tax. Governments discovered early that salt was the perfect thing to tax. Everyone needed it. No one could avoid it. You couldn't grow it in your backyard. France's salt tax, called the gabelle, lasted for over 300 years. It was one of the most hated laws in French history. Peasants paid up to 6 times more for salt than nobles did. The inequality was so extreme, so visible, so daily, that historians consider the gabelle one of the key triggers of the French Revolution. People weren't just angry about bread, they were angry about salt. And then there was Gandhi. In 1930, when India was under British colonial rule, the British held a monopoly on salt. Indians couldn't harvest or sell their own salt, even from their own coastlines. Gandhi chose salt as the symbol of resistance. He walked 240 miles to the sea. He picked up a handful of salt from the shore. That single act, a man picking up salt, sparked a movement that eventually ended British rule over 300 million people. Salt didn't just season food. Salt started revolutions. Today, salt costs almost nothing. A kilogram for less than $1. So cheap we throw it on icy roads in winter. By the ton. We use it to make chemicals, to process industrial materials, to soften water. The average person consumes around 3,400 milligrams of sodium a day, almost entirely, without thinking about it. But here's the quiet irony. The thing that once made empires is now considered a health risk. Too much salt raises blood pressure. It strains the heart. The substance that kept armies alive is now something doctors warn us to reduce. The world didn't just change its relationship with salt, it completely inverted it. Think about that. The next time you reach for the salt shaker, you're holding something that built roads, paid soldiers, started revolutions, and preserved the food that kept civilization alive through every winter, every war, every famine in human history. It costs almost nothing now, but for most of human history, it cost everything, and almost nobody thinks about that anymore. Next episode, we're going underground. The hidden history of coal, the black rock that built the modern world, and nearly destroyed it in the process. If you enjoyed uncovering the hidden story behind salt, subscribe, leave a comment on what you'd like us to cover next, and hit that like button. Now go look at your salt shaker. You'll never see it the same way again. History is everywhere.